Hey guys, welcome back to the tennis vlog for the final time during the 2020 French Open to preview and predict the men's final between the top seed Novak Djokovic and the 12-time champion Rafael Nadal. And after having to predict Kenin versus Swiatek in the women's final, I'll take anything I can get, even if it is two members of the big three in a Grand Slam final, which is generally hard to call, but I know where I'm going with this one. I've had a little think through, and what we're going to do now is look through the paths of both to date at the French Open, see the kind of things that they've come through, the strategies they've produced at times, have a little look at the head-to-head as well, and the vast history between this pair, and then have a look at what might play out on Sunday as they go head-to-head in a French Open final for the third time. But it's been many meetings for them at the French Open, and mostly wins for Nadal, but Djokovic did get that win in the quarterfinals in 2015. So they have some history going across the board, but also on clay courts, which we'll look into. Let's start with the lower ranked player on this occasion. Let's go with Nadal, the number 2 seed. Obviously, so many question marks surrounding Nadal. Hadn't had the warm-up that he would usually have coming into the French Open. Different time of year, different circumstances. Djokovic had obviously played over in America on the hard courts, and the questions for Nadal were how would he cope with the different conditions, different time of year. Obviously lost in straight sets to Diego Schwartzman in Rome in quite worrying fashion for some, so that was a question mark. Nadal has answered all those questions in making the final without dropping a set. And don't get me wrong, there were moments where he could have dropped a set, there were moments where he could have been pushed, and Nadal was there when it really mattered. So first 4 rounds quite similar in the way that Nadal progressed, really, over Igor Gerasimov, Mackenzie McDonald, Stefano Travaglia, and Sebastian Korda. So he didn't drop more than 10 games, in any of those matches. It was 10 games he dropped in the first match, 6-4, 6-4, 6-2 over Gerasimov. That gave a little bit of a foreshadowing of what was to come, really. In the opening games of that one, Gerasimov, I remember it really vividly, actually, was moving into the court, serving big, moving in behind the serve, taking the game to Nadal to some effect. But once Nadal got going, he was held back and he wasn't able to produce those tactics. But I think we have seen throughout the event that it is the aggressive attacking game that is what's going to give Nadal trouble. That wasn't able to be produced on a regular basis in any of those opening 4 matches, so Nadal coming through without dropping a set. Then we got to the quarters and it started to get interesting because he was up against Jannik Sinner, who is unseeded, but he is one of the rising stars of the game, still in his teens, some natural talent that he's got on him. The timing is fantastic, the way he backs himself during the rallies is brilliant, and people expected that one to be testing, and it was. Sinner getting himself inside the baseline in that match and taking the game to Nadal, big heavy ground strokes, and Nadal kind of languishing behind the baseline at times. He was put on the stretch, he was at the mercy of Sinner at times. But back end of that set, when Sinner had the opportunity to serve for it, I do think he blinked in the headlights a little bit, and Nadal stepped up to capitalize. In the tiebreak, he was the leading man. He is there when he needs to be. And from there, he did impose a more attacking game. He went toe-to-toe a little bit more. In the moments when it didn't pay off, he shook it off and he went back to business. He got some more depth on his shots, which was key. He wasn't getting as much depth in the early stages, but what he was doing was still putting a lot of balls in play. The topspin that Nadal possesses even, yeah, it's not bouncing as high as it usually would in Paris, but it's still giving him a lot of consistency. And I think the amount of returns he was making, the amount of balls he was putting in court, just made Sinner feel like he had to work so hard for every single point. And that's what Nadal does. He gets in your head in that way and was able to come through that one ultimately in straight sets, 7-6, 6-4, 6-1. Then came the clash, the rematch with Diego Schwartzman in the semi-finals. I think a few people picking Schwartzman for the upset there. He was in fantastic form, came into that match having not dropped a set, capitalizing on his run to the Rome final, where he took down Nadal in straights. and looks convincing. The thing with Schwartzman is that he can adjust to any situation and circumstance with the weather. He moves incredibly well. His balance is fantastic, but he strikes particularly flat on the clay off the backhand side, which can be devastating when he's moved himself into the court, and Nadal felt the blow of that a lot in Rome. He wasn't able to be quite so lethal here, Schwartzman, and I think part of that was that Nadal had a much better serving day than he did in Rome. If you remember back to Rome, Nadal actually still had chances to get back into things in the second set, kept breaking Schwartzman back, but then didn't have his own serve to consolidate, and therefore it was going back and forth and back and forth. There were moments where he was missing first serves here, Nadal, but he did feel the need to go big on the first serve just because of how well Schwartzman covers that swinging lefty serve out wide. It's a real weapon for Nadal, and Schwartzman, he's a small guy, but great reach on it. He positioned himself in such a way that he could really swing into that out wide serve and get a good return back in play, and those returns are crucial to setting him up in the point. A lot of those returns going back to Nadal's feet, which took the angle away from him and allowed Schwartzman a little bit more time to get back into the rally, and that's something I'll comment on again in future. But Nadal was just really smart, I felt, during that match. He knew it was going to be tough. It was a 14 minutes opening game, which was his service game, and you could feel, the longer an opening game goes, whether it's the opening game of the first set, second, third, etc., the longer it goes, the more important it becomes, the more significant it becomes, the more it can be a momentum setter. And it definitely was for Nadal. He was able to edge through that one, and Schwartzman was reproducing a lot of what he did in Rome, attacking with the backhand, covering the whole court, moving Nadal around. But Nadal got his sprints on and was covering the court, mixed it up a little bit, upped the ante on, I've been mentioning the cross-court backhand for Nadal. It's a flatter shot than the forehand, and he can get a good angle on it, and I think he was able to take Schwartzman by surprise with that particular shot at moments. When he'd come through that opening game of this match, it was ultimately, I think, what potentially decided the 6-3 opening set. It was 6-3, 6-3, 7-6. Now, do not think that match was really straightforward, because there were serious chances for Schwartzman in both those opening sets, but it crushed him, I think, that Nadal was able to own and dominate the key moments, which is what he does. He knows when he has to peak. That's part of what makes him so great. So Nadal able to edge the key moments there. I felt there was a little bit of a drop-off from Schwartzman. A lot of people are just sat there saying, oh, Schwartzman didn't play as well as he did in Rome. I feel like he did. At the beginning of the match, he was coming with all the right strategies, but Nadal was able to shut him out when it mattered, and it was a better Nadal than it was in Rome, more than it was a worse Schwartzman than it was in Rome. Nadal just brought his better tennis. There was a drop-off from Schwartzman back end of the second. I feel like he had to change his tactics up a bit. What he was doing wasn't working so well. Had to try and take it to Nadal a bit earlier and didn't have the consistency for that. But there were openings in that third set which are significant. Both Nadal and Djokovic had lapses in the third sets of their semi-final encounters. I'll come to Djokovic's shortly. Nadal's was when he was serving for the 4-1 lead, didn't get it, and suddenly he lost his intensity. And Nadal is such an intense, energized player who runs on the adrenaline. And it was like something suddenly died, the wind went out of his sails. Schwartzman, for a while, didn't look like he would take advantage because his spirit had been so crushed, I feel like, at that point. But when Nadal opened the door a couple of times, particularly I think when Schwartzman went through a lengthy hold for 5-all in the third set, I thought that adrenaline was enough to get him properly going again. He was right into it, and Nadal had to save break points at 5-all, but that got Nadal going. He'd been a little bit iffy. It looked potentially to be going to a fourth set, but he went big behind the serve, under pressure, on the break points, and played a clinical tiebreak to come through. So, story of the tournament for me, Rafael Nadal plays big in those big moments when it really matters, and that could be key coming into this final, this umpteenth meeting with Novak Djokovic. So far, by the way, the head-to-head stands in Djokovic's favour. only just 29 wins to Nadal's 26. So we'll take a little bit more of a look at that head-to-head shortly. But Djokovic's run then. Djokovic has been pushed a little bit more in recent rounds, and this is something that I probably wouldn't have expected to be saying a few days ago, because Djokovic did just look so convincing in those opening matches and had looked so good in Rome. Just had the fire under his feet from the way that the US Open ended. Obviously, we all know what went down there, and he's a worker, you know, he's so hungry, ever hungry for more, and he got back to work. He did not look troubled in any of his opening 3 rounds against Michael Ymer, Ricardo Sperankis, Daniel Gallen. 6-love, 6-2, 6-3, 6-1, 6-2, 6-2, 6-love, 6-3, 6-2, just very straightforward, and able to have a bit of fun with it as well. You know, he mixed things up. The drop shot has been a recurring theme for Djokovic throughout this fortnight, and it's been something we've seen a lot across matches. Because of these heavier conditions, it dies that little bit more. It is so effective, and I'm sure that we'll see Djokovic trying to utilise that against Nadal because of the position that Nadal tends to take in the court behind the baseline. He'll be trying to use a lot of them because both Djokovic and Nadal have the dilemma of, how do I finish these points? So, came through the first 3 rounds without much trouble. Also straight sets over Karen Khachanov, the first seeded opponent he faced, 6-4, 6-3, 6-3. Khachanov, I felt, had put Djokovic under some physical pressure there, but was playing a lot of the match from the baseline, didn't move in the way he needed to really be able to capitalise on the discomfort that he was causing Djokovic to feel. So Djokovic was able to steer through that one in straight, 6-4, 6-3, 6-3. And then he struggled against the number 17 seed and US Open semi-finalist Pablo Carreño Busta. He eventually came through 4-6, 6-2, 6-3, 6-4. But the struggles for Djokovic were obviously physical. There was some sort of physical issue. He had his neck straps. There was some left arm issue as well. I think it did trouble him on the serve. There were a lot of second serves from Djokovic throughout that match, and you know, he's not got the biggest serve in the game, but he places it well. When he's getting his first serve in, he's winning a lot of those points. He always wins a high percentage of first serve points, so I think it's quite significant, and I think that was shown again in his match with Tsitsipas, which I'll come to within the next few seconds. But Djokovic in that match with Carreño Busta was getting outlasted from the baseline a fair bit, and that's not something that you see with Djokovic much outside of his matches with Nadal and sometimes Federer. It's not something that you see happening. Sometimes Thiem as well, let's be real. But Carreño Busta, you know, was able to move him and was able to hang with him when Djokovic was producing the angles that would usually throw other players off balance. But, you know, Djokovic was able to pull it together and outlast Carreño Busta in the end for the 4-set win. Then it nearly went very, very wrong against Stefanos Tsitsipas. And when I predicted for this match, Djokovic in 5, that is not the Djokovic in 5 match that I expected. I did not see Djokovic being taken to 5 sets from 2 sets to love and match point up. I would love to take the credit, but I just can't say that's not how I anticipated it going. I thought it would be a little bit more of a trade of sets. But Djokovic looked pretty well in control in the early stages of that match. Similar to Nadal, had a tight opening service hold and was able to then carry the momentum from that, which essentially got him to the opening set. You know, Tsitsipas has been playing well all tournament with his own balance at the baseline, his depth of shot. You know, his backhand is really well used on this surface, and he has that ability to come to the net, but Djokovic does like a target at the net, and you have to do that little bit more with Djokovic before you reach the forecourt if it's going to be effective, which Tsitsipas did back end of the match. He was moving in more when Djokovic was more off balance. Early stages, Djokovic was able to find the spaces and was able to come through in the big moments. There were a number of times where Tsitsipas looked comfortable on serve, but suddenly would lose a string of points, and he'd almost seem to be rushing it over. Djokovic looked on his way to a pretty comprehensive victory. I think he did open the door for Tsitsipas initially, ready and keep backing and believing in himself. But it was on Djokovic's racket. He served for straight sets victory. I think on match point, he missed a backhand up the line, which is one of the shots for Djokovic. Doesn't generally miss those, but he went wide. And from there, he felt the pressure because Tsitsipas did take the game to him. Throughout that match, Tsitsipas performed in pressure moments. He faced countless breakpoints, 22 in total, if I remember correctly. And as he went on, he was almost in a trance-like state as he played those breakpoints. It was as if he'd made peace with the fact that they were going to come up. And every time it happens, he moved Djokovic out wide, he stepped into the court, he fired the winners up the lines, he took the game to Djokovic in the pressure moments more than he did elsewhere. And throughout the match, as the match went on, it did become a more aggressive game from Tsitsipas, and we saw how that can trouble Djokovic, even in these conditions. Also in those key moments, I felt that Djokovic did show some tension. There were more second serves from him that allowed Tsitsipas to take some advantage. And at the back end of the third and fourth sets, it was Djokovic unforced errors and losing his way that actually helped to get Tsitsipas across the line. But I think he was fortunate in the end. He did very well, Djokovic, to stay calm, having almost fallen from that dominant position. He did very well to stay focused, stay calm, just keep playing his game, and finally burst the Tsitsipas bubble. He actually broke serve with a drop shot winner, which would have been very reassuring for him because the success with the drop shot came and went. He wasn't always timing it that well. And that's another thing. You know, if Djokovic is going to try the drop shot with the bigger hitters who are hitting deep, he's not got as much time to set it up and it has to be so perfect. But it was when it needed to be. And I think Tsitsipas, a little bit more tired in that final set. Djokovic came through 6-3, 6-2, 5-7, 4-6, 6-1 to set up this meeting with Nadal, and that little roundup of both their runs has taken longer than I thought, which is probably helpful because I think I've been over-analysing this tournament, and I wanted to keep this one a little bit more simple, just because these two have faced off so many times. They know each other's game styles, they've faced off across the board over the years, and the head-to-head, I said it, it's 29-26 in the favour of Djokovic. Not all of those meetings are going to have an impact here. I'm more interested when I look at this head-to-head in the clay court meetings that these two have had in the past. And on clay courts, while he trails the overall head-to-head, Nadal actually leads 17 wins to 7 on clay. Now, it's interesting, Nadal's won the last 3 meetings on clay, the most recent of which was last year in Rome. It was 6-love, 4-6, 6-1 for Nadal. Sometimes it can be a little bit of calm before the storm when you win a very straightforward set against a big rival, because they just slam the door on that, move on to the new set and change up their tactics. And Djokovic was able to get his teeth back in there, but Nadal closed out confidently. The last time Djokovic beat Nadal was actually on clay, because he won the meeting earlier this year, but the last time he beat him on clay was in 2016, if I remember correctly. Yeah, in the quarterfinals of Rome, straight sets. Something that's key about Djokovic's wins over Nadal on clay for me is that 6 of the 7 have come in straight sets, which includes his win over Nadal in the quarterfinals of Roland Garros 2015. Notably, the only time he's beaten Nadal at this tournament, he's one of only 2 players to do it, full credit to him. But 2015 was Nadal's tumultuous year. Mentally, he was as bad as he's ever been. Nadal's a mental beast most of the time, so mentally he was nowhere. Physically, he wasn't at his best. So obviously it was a massive achievement in itself for Djokovic to beat Nadal at the French Open anyway, but it wasn't Nadal's peak year by a long shot. So Djokovic will still take some confidence from that. He mentioned it even in his press conference, I think, after the semis. He will be drawing on that because he needs to take hold of anything he possibly can and draw on it, because Nadal has so much confidence behind him here. He's going for his 100th victory at this tournament in this title. He's going for the trophy number 13, and he's never lost in a French Open final, which includes 2 wins, I think, over Djokovic in the final. So Nadal has a lot going for him, and you'll hear a lot of people refer to Nadal as a confidence player. He plays his best when he's got a lot to feel confident about. And that is a lot of the time, to be honest, because Nadal, he's been very consistent across the board. I would say now, since 2017. He's had little spells of injury since then, little periods at the sideline, but his level hasn't really dropped that much across any surface. And that should be a little bit worrying for Djokovic because it's a clay court, it's Roland Garros, and it's Rafael Nadal. Djokovic will know not to underestimate this guy. It's difficult to know how much to draw on from what has been played in this tournament to date. A lot of the time when members of the big three face off, I tend to feel like their paths to the final don't say as much because they're so familiar with each other's games. They know the little tricks. They have a better idea of what's going to happen, and it just comes down to the day. But I have been a little bit surprised at Djokovic in the big moments in his last couple of matches. Both him and Nadal lapsed in their third sets in the semi-finals. Nadal recovered, didn't cost him, and I think arguably they both played opponents of a similar standard as well. Schwartzman, he's not got the ranking or the results of Tsitsipas so far, but I think they brought a similar level of opposition. Nadal was able to hold on, come through in straights. Djokovic nearly lost it. And it's very rare for me that I sit watching Djokovic, having seen him have the lead, and suddenly think that the outcome is not inevitable. Usually I'm sat there and I think Djokovic wins this hands down. There were one or two moments there where I didn't know. Even though I predicted Djokovic, I did feel like Tsitsipas might edge it until that moment at the beginning of the decider when I knew it was Djokovic's. But there was that moment of doubt, which I don't usually have with Djokovic. What of the tactics in the final? This is another interesting thing because we've seen with Nadal during this tournament that the way to beat him is to play aggressive. Nadal is still fast as lightning when it comes to covering the court. I felt he was very smart against Schwartzman in terms of mixing things up. Was it his best level all the way through? No, it wasn't. I'm not sure if Nadal has hit his peak here. Because it's not the conditions that he likes the best. But what he's done is played smart, kept his head down, worked hard. I feel like he did very well with the serve in that match against Schwartzman because of Schwartzman's positioning to cover the wide serve. He would mix it up with the T serve and get some cheap points in that way by surprising him. Crucial against Djokovic because of these two, that's something that Djokovic definitely has going for him. He's the better returner. And I think we will see him covering that wide serve if he's thought through this. I think he'll be going to the feet of Nadal as well. We saw Federer use that to great effect against Nadal in the Wimbledon semi-finals last year. Return after return to his feet, pushing him back, getting himself into the rally. Very, very effective against Nadal. If you put it either side, he's got more of a chance of using the angle and getting himself in a good position in the rally. The thing as well is that Djokovic is the way he thrives. And we all know this because he's been around doing it and killing people with it for a number of years. Djokovic is so durable in the long rallies. He bounces back, he returns with interest. The forehand cross court has looked very good for Djokovic throughout this tournament. He's just so steady when he needs to be. But I'm not sure that game style beats Nadal here because Nadal can go steady as well. He's got the top spin to given that margin for error. Yeah, it's not bouncing as high, and Djokovic will take some confidence from that because in the times that he's beaten Nadal, and I didn't go into this in as much depth as I meant to, so I will do now, 6 of the 7 wins over Nadal for Djokovic on clay have come in straights. So most of the time he's got those wins in wetter conditions. I remember some of them distinctly that Nadal isn't as happy with. His ball isn't bouncing as high. And Djokovic is able to utilize that, so he'll draw on that for this match. But also, Djokovic hasn't let Nadal get going in most of those clay court wins, and it's very difficult to see. I mean, the chances of Djokovic getting this win in straight sets are very slim when you consider that Nadal hasn't dropped a set reaching the final. So how likely is he to play 3 sets and lose them all on Sunday? And Djokovic's most success on clay against Nadal has come when he's just completely shut him out. And because I forgot to mention that earlier, I've now lost where I was before. But, here's the thing. My feeling is that Djokovic playing Djokovic's usual game would not win this match because Nadal throughout his last matches has been moving closer to the baseline, has been looking to be more aggressive, and he's most in trouble when players are taking it to him and he's being put on the run. So Djokovic, to win this match, I feel, for at least portions of the match, is going to have to step out of his comfort zone and really take the game to Nadal in a way that we don't often see Djokovic doing, because he doesn't need to. So I think he's really going to have to step up. That means his serve is going to have to be good. I think that, he needs a large percentage of first serves and needs to do a lot with his first shot behind the serve with the 1-2 punch. I think he can do that with the return as well because of his good coverage. But for me, I don't have too many concerns about Nadal if this does go long. I do expect it to extend straight sets. I think the better thing for Nadal is that he has conserved energy. I don't think it makes much difference that Djokovic has been in battles and Nadal hasn't. Nadal has still been challenged and been able to come out on top in the key moments. I don't think it matters that Nadal hasn't been taken beyond straight sets. I think it's a good thing for him, given that he's not played much tennis recently, that he has reserves for if this becomes a marathon battle. So that's something that's noteworthy. The thing here for me, I'm going to wrap it up soon. I know I've been talking for a while, but we can go on and on about this match, okay? And I'm trying to keep it a little bit more simple. The thing that has saved Djokovic so far throughout this tournament is that he has been able to come on top in the most key moments. But that's also Nadal's biggest strength. I think more than even the forehand down the line, the biggest strength for Nadal is that he comes through in the big moments when it really matters. A lot of people will point to the fact that Djokovic has been so consistent all year, unbeatable. Like, he hasn't been beaten in an outright finished contest because of the incident at the US Open. There has not been a finished match where Djokovic hasn't come out on top. But if we look at the recent Grand Slams and the recent Grand Slam finals that Djokovic has been in, I am very used to Djokovic bringing his best to the Slam finals because he's such a focused player and such a machine in that respect. He always brings his best when it matters. But honestly, in his last two Grand Slam finals, I don't think he has brought his best. Australian Open January against Dominic Thiem, he was 2-1 down. I think maybe even 2-1 and a breakdown. Wimbledon against Federer, we know what happened there. He was down double championship point on the return. What Djokovic did in both of those matches, he did not physically outplay Thiem and Federer. He edged them mentally. He beat them mentally in the end. In 5 sets. That was not a one-sided Djokovic victory on either occasion. He edged them out mentally in 5 sets. And Nadal is better mentally than both Thiem and Federer. It is very, very difficult to beat Nadal mentally. So I think that this is going to be challenging for Djokovic. I also don't doubt that, he'll be up for the challenge because he sees Nadal or Federer in a Grand Slam final and he wants that even more. I think Djokovic will bring a better level than he brought against Carreño Busta and than he brought against Tsitsipas because he's that big moment player and he knows that a lot is on the line for him here. If Nadal gets this, he's level with Federer in all-time Grand Slams. He's got a whopping number of French Open trophies. Djokovic is still those 3 slams behind. Djokovic wins this, it's 2 times the career Grand Slam for him as well. So that's massive. But I think I just have to look at that Djokovic survived against Thiem. He survived against Federer. He survived his match pretty much with Tsitsipas. And I think it's going to be harder to survive against Nadal, especially in the final of the French Open, a tournament that Nadal has dominated. And yeah, it's a different time of year and it's different conditions. So this is probably Djokovic's best shot of beating Nadal, unless he plays him when he's 45 or something. Probably his best shot of beating Nadal in a Roland Garros final. But if Nadal hasn't dropped a set coming into this final in conditions that he's not fond of, it is hard to see him dropping 3 sets in the final. I say hard, but if anyone can beat Nadal, it's Djokovic. But I have confidence in the way that Nadal has solved his way through matches coming into this final. I think he's handled everything really well. The conditions on Sunday are also supposed to be okay. You know, it's not supposed to rain, which is the main thing for Nadal. So I think Djokovic is really going to have to bring it to Nadal if he wants to win this one, but particularly if this gets close, I feel like Nadal plays every single point like it's the first and the last. He will not go down here without one heck of a fight. And I do have confidence in Nadal here, so I am going to say that. I'm just trying to think if I've missed anything. There's one key thing, okay? One key thing, before I make my prediction, one key thing. Djokovic needs to play Rafael Nadal, okay? I'm going to explain it and flesh that out in a minute. He needs to play Rafael Nadal, but Nadal needs to not play Novak Djokovic. This is what I mean by that. So Djokovic needs to play Nadal. He needs to play the status of Nadal. He needs to play the name of Nadal, because Djokovic brings his best when he plays the best players. He sees Nadal, he sees Federer, he sees their success, and that makes him hungry, that makes him want more, that makes him raise his level. So he needs to look across that net, see Nadal, and raise his level in response. Nadal needs to look across that net and just see the game that's coming at him on the day. Nadal has a lot of respect for his opponents, and I don't fully know how to explain this, but sometimes there might be an over-respect, playing certain shots because it's Novak Djokovic. I think Djokovic needs to play Nadal, but Nadal needs to play the game of Djokovic as opposed to Djokovic himself. He needs to just deal with what comes across the net and play the way he has throughout the tournament, as opposed to changing it up because of what Djokovic might do next. So I'm going to say Rafael Nadal to come through this. I think it would extend straight sets because it's Novak Djokovic here and he's going to fight down the wire. It's got to be 4 sets or 5. In their 2 previous finals, it's been 4 sets for Nadal. I'm tempted to go 5 just because it's Djokovic. Will Nadal have too much in the big moments? That's the question. So just to be on the safe side, I think I'll say Rafael Nadal to win this in 5 sets, but I do think it could be Nadal in 4. He's just been very big when it matters this tournament, and Djokovic not quite so much. So that's my prediction. I've seen quite a few of you sharing yours in the chat, so thank you to those that have tuned in live. I'm sorry this is extended half an hour. I did not think it would take this long, but there is a lot to chew through when it comes to meetings between players of this caliber. So thanks to everyone that stuck around. I mean, hopefully this goes better than the women. The WTA is in a downward spiral, but the men's tends to go a little bit better. It's been decent compared to the women's. This tournament has been unpredictable, you know, conditions, everything. It's been a difficult event, but we're nearly at the end, and Nadal and Djokovic have come through some testing encounters and could give each other another one. So I finished there. If you're coming to this at a later date, leave a comment and let me know what your predictions are. And we'll just have to wait and see on this one. A clash like this, either player could come out on top, but there's one key statistic here, I think, and that is 12 wins to 0 losses in French Open finals. So I finish. Thank you very much for watching. I'm not sure when I'll be back, so if you've enjoyed the videos to some extent and want to keep up to date with what's happening on the channel, hit subscribe and you'll get notified when new videos are up and out. So thank you very much for watching, and whenever it may be, I will see you next time.